What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Moto Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Nesler. We come to you each and every week to talk to you about the business of moto. Guests in the industry that have done incredible things, guests in the industry that are building incredible things, and sometimes even special guests from outside the industry that can bring you some incredible knowledge to help you build your moto career. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Nesler. We got a great guest for you today, somebody that I think you'll enjoy, that's going to bring a unique perspective and approach to our episode today. Somebody I'm excited to have on. Before we jump in, I always want to remind you to check out, if you're not subscribed to RacerX or haven't renewed to RacerX, be sure to check it out at racerxonline.com/moto marketing. You can always check out the latest subscription perks and benefits, the renewal subscription perks and benefits at that site, and that greatly helps us out. Also want to give a shout out to our friends at Michelin Bicycle Tires. Man, you know them from the moto space. You know them from the automotive racing side of things. Maybe you got one pair of Michelin tires on your camper, whatever it is. They make great bicycle tires as well. We use them for our e-bikes. We compete in the GNCC EMTB series, and we run the E-Wilds, the Force AMs, all kinds of great products that they're putting out, and everybody knows and loves Randy Richardson. Be sure to check those folks out. And let's dive in. So we've got an awesome guest for you today. It's funny how everything comes full circle. I grew up following this gentleman, and more or less, he was one of my heroes as a kid. I grew up racing BMX. A lot of people don't realize that I grew up following moto, following Supercross, Motocross, but I never raced. I rode for fun, but what I raced was BMX. And this gentleman was in the peak of his career when I was getting into the sport and really had an influence on me. Somehow, I think through this show, or I don't really know how, somehow we've kind of connected on social media over the last couple of years and been in contact off and on, and somebody that I've wanted to have on. We've got Dr. Jason Richardson with us today. He's a world champion, a Pan Am Games gold medalist, an Olympic psychologist, mental skills coach. He's a really engaging speaker. You can check him out at DrJasonRichardson.com. He helps create results for athletes, entrepreneurs, and executives by combining psychology and coaching. So I thought it'd be a really, really cool perspective to have him come on, talk a little bit about what does he do for the entrepreneur, because a lot of entrepreneurs in the moto space listen to this, and what does he do for the athletes. So Dr. Jason, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me and aging me in your introduction. But it's all good. It's all good. I own that. So when were you racing BMX?
Man, I started racing BMX in 2002 and went all in. By 2004, I was running the track. I was still a kid. I was running my local track. I remember you in the all green, was it Croupy? Yeah,
Croupy.
Croupy days.
Yeah, that was my peak. And it's funny, that was like my second peak. So there's a little nugget for aging racers. As long as you can be healthy and motivated, you'd be surprised what you can do as you age. But yeah, those were great years.
Yeah,
those Croupy years.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. It's cool, the amount of BMX guys that have moved on to other really cool things that I just used to idolize when I was in the sport, that I've met through moto. I just spent some time at a recent GNCC with Alan Foster, which was funny. Alan's walking around, nobody has any idea who the hell the guy is, and I'm freaking out because it's Alan Foster, and we hung out a little bit. So
he's on his RV tour around the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. He went up to Snowshoe and did the GNCC.
Well, Dale Holmes, a guy I used to race, he's the one who turned me on to you, and then that's when we connected. So.
Yeah. Surreal as well. I used to idolize Dale as well, so that's funny to hear that. So, man, before we dive into what you're doing now, I want to set the stage for everybody, because you were one of the faces of BMX for a very long time, and there's a lot of crossover in BMX and moto. There's a lot of past racers in moto that take their kids racing BMX. They got their start racing BMX. There's a lot of BMX guys that ride and race moto. So, for those that aren't super familiar with the BMX side of things, I gave you a little bit of an intro, but kind of elaborate a little bit on your career and who exactly you are in that space, if you would.
Yeah, so I raced BMX my whole life. A lot like Moto kids race Moto their whole life. Found myself racing nationally as an amateur, and rising through the ranks. Was a, main maker, so to speak, one of the factory guys. I actually came on late in my amateur career, but yeah, it was time to turn pro or go to school. I did go to school, but then I realized instead of getting a regular job, I could probably make this racing thing work versus working part-time wherever for whomever.
Sure.
And so that was the deal. I turned pro. Actually, I turned pro my senior year of high school, thinking I had to quit. So I figured I might as well turn pro just to say I was a pro, and then call it a day when I went to college. But then I went to college, and like I said, I figured I better make a good go of this. And so I used my money, my purse money, to pay for the next race. That's how it worked. And then I, luckily, the timing was great, and rode the wave, and TV contracts were coming in the sport. Some mountain bike companies were coming back into BMX. And so I just rode this wave on up. So I was able to have a 15-year pro BMX career, which is crazy. Not only in BMX standards, but just professional athlete standards.
Yeah.
But I never stopped going to school. Because in BMX, a good living's, you could be in the six figures, but that's not retirement money, right? That's not a $20 million contract, a $30 million contract. So yeah, I just pursued my interest school-wise, which was philosophy. No real career path there. And then I got my master's in business along the way. And then racing kept going and actually got better after I got married, crazy enough. And, into my 30s and was riding real strong then. Broke my femur in 2006. And then on the mend, because I decided to still race and go out on my terms, I happened to be sitting next to a couple coming back from some kind of conference of some sort, professional conference, and they were a psychologist. And I just started talking to them on the plane and kind of asking what that process was. I had a couple years on my contract with Haro, and I was like, okay, I've gotten my master's before. I think I can do this. And it just, that light bulb went off. I was like, this is perfect. And I'm the perfect guy for this because I worked with a sports psychologist through my whole career. And then I figured I could be that guy, not only for BMX, but in the action sport world or even beyond, because I knew what it was like to be the young guy. I knew what it was like to transfer from going amateur to pro. I knew what it was like to stress over my gate starts or obsess about whatever, the new part that I needed that I wasn't able to get, or worrying about something showing up in the mail before I had to get on a plane to go halfway around the world. All these little things, plus dealing with life, right? Like making money at a young age and traveling the world to do that. And all the people who kind of want to latch onto you when things are going well and then push you aside when things are not. So I knew how to deal with that.
Right.
And I figured I could plug myself in. And not only that, help these riders transition out of sport and become successful and take whatever it was that made them successful in the sport and help them use that into business or moving forward. So long story bearable. I went back to school, became Dr. Jason Richardson, and plugged myself back in. And it was pretty cool. I was 2007 at the Pan Am Games riding for Team USA. And then 2012 at the Olympics working with Olympic athletes in my sport. And here we are about to go. Wow. Let's see. We had what was it? That was London, and then we had Rio, and then we had Tokyo. So proud to say I've had people competing in all of those. Proud to say that, my client got a medal in Tokyo just last summer. So things have been going great. And then since then, lo and behold, the whole sport performance thing and the stuff that we do and use and the mindset and just the lifestyle of that tends to transfer quite well into the entrepreneurial space and business space. So it's allowed me to get up on stage and speak at conferences and do some executive coaching and work with people starting their businesses as well.
Yeah. So I've always found that interesting how much crossover there is from sport to business. And I think, I was never a professional athlete, but I took myself serious as an athlete all the way from high school. I played football and I raced BMX in high school. And then even to this day, I still crave some form of competitive sport, whether it's racing, mountain bikes, BMX, e-bikes. Weirdly enough, I've gotten this like weird obsession recently with competitive cornhole. Like I can't do anything just for fun. Like I have to compete. I'm not that annoying guy that wants to beat everybody, but like I'm motivated by competition. And it's the same things that motivate me in business to perform. Do you see that as well, to where a lot of athletes seem to thrive and do well in the entrepreneurial space because there are similarities? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think they can. So this is where we can get into the nuts and bolts of psychology and personality. And I do assessments with everyone that I work with, and I assess their strengths or have them do a strengths assessment. And one of the strengths people carry is competition. So that's probably a strength of yours, meaning if there's some form of competition or scorekeeping involved, then you're going to be more engaged into that thing. So if you were a client of mine, I'd say, okay, well, training might not be great for you. You might hate it. You might rather compete, and you might not be as engaged. So how can we gamify training for you to where you're engaged more in training, as well as when it's go time? Is that
kind of what Zwift has done?
Yeah, that kind of is. Yeah, that kind of is. And then it's interesting with these apps and everything. I mean, truth be told, marketing people know psychology better than psychologists, or at least human behavior. But they gamify it, and there's two things: there's a competition aspect and there's a community aspect with a lot of things, right? So shared experience is just as important, which is the second part of what I was about to say to answer your question, which is, some people aren't necessarily motivated by the win. And I know that sounds crazy because there's a lot of successful people, but competition isn't high in their strengths. But, sometimes it's a way out. Sometimes it is a sense of belonging into this thing. Sometimes there's actually a bigger carrot for that person, and in order for them to achieve that or get that carrot, then that means they have to compete at a certain level to stay in the space. But yeah, there's how you identify as a person. So that's the thing that really can make or break the person who wants to transition out of whatever it is into something else, is this not letting go of who you were, but taking who you were / are into the next thing. And then being okay with the fact that you may have to remediate, being okay with the fact that you may have to relearn or retrain or possibly reinvent. But the cool thing about that is it's not as bad as most people think, right? So it took you 20 years to get to a certain level of mastery in motocross. It took you your whole life to get to a certain level of mastery in BMX or whatever that thing is. It's not going to take you necessarily that long to get to the mastery moving on to the next thing. One, you don't need the mastery you had to be successful in the next thing. And two, there is muscle memory there. Like there are certain kind of soft skills and stick-to-itiveness and discipline and lifestyle stuff that you've done because you've been so immersed in a sport your whole life or a discipline your whole life that transfer into the other realm. For instance, when I was becoming Dr. Jason and getting my hours and all that other stuff, like I had the mindset of, okay, I want to be as good of a psychologist as I was a BMXer, which I don't even know what the metric for that was, but that was the level of intensity that I approached school. That was the level of intensity that when I went into my first job interviews for my internships, boom, boom, boom. And not only that, I had this huge professional experience behind me. So I was able to unravel all that stuff that I went through as a racer, human, and lay that on top of this educational foundation that I had just gotten. And then it was a no-brainer as to who to hire. It was me, right? Because not only did I live this life, I also had the educational background or this other retrain.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So something that I've always found interesting about what you're doing is the sport that you come from. And talk a little bit about that for those that aren't as familiar with BMX as they are Moto. Like, for you to be doing what you're doing with athletes and entrepreneurs, does a lot of that come from the sport that you've come from? Meaning, BMX isn't a long race. Like, you've got to mentally be in it from the time that gate drops, because a race could be 45 seconds, 30 to 40. Yeah, 30.
45 seconds would be long.
Yes. So you don't have time. Like in Moto, somebody could start out.
Yeah, you have 20 minutes and 2 laps.
Having a bad race, they can turn it around. Like, if you've got a bad first 3 pedal strokes, that's going to be the difference in how your race is. So, and I know there's some other folks in your sport that are interested in the mental performance side of things too, and I think it comes from just the makeup of BMX. Would you agree? And kind of elaborate on what I'm talking about.
So BMX is pretty hardcore in that. If you get cut off at the start, we'll just say that you have 28 seconds now to make it happen versus 30, right?
Yeah.
Versus several laps, to kind of get into the race, or 20 minutes or whatever it is. And I'm not saying, I actually think, I know from a fitness level, I think motocross is like the most underappreciated sport in the world, as far as what people think you have to be from an athlete standpoint. Like, it's ridiculous how fit you have to be to ride a motorcycle well for that long. But BMX, in my opinion, and I'm biased, is probably the most difficult, most highest failure rate sport ever, because it is just you once you get on the gate. It is obvious when you're losing, and it is over real quick. Mm-hmm. So, and we all upset, and I, in a weird way, even though it's 2 wheels and it's dirt and there's braking and turning and jumping, in some ways BMX is a little bit like golf, because golfers in many cases obsess about their swing, right? The driving range. And that's how BMXers are. Gate start. Right. And there's so much that goes into the gate start, and the form and the timing and all of that stuff. And like you said, your first 3 cranks, being efficient out of the gate. Oh, my second pedal came around late, all that stuff. So you have 8 people on the gate. You line up, you want to get 4th or better to transfer to the next round. The podium is top 3, and only 8 people make the final. And you could be at a world championship event. There's maybe 60 to 100 people in your class, in the elite category. A national event, you could have quarterfinals, which is, I don't know, over 24 people or something like that, 30 people. So you run these motos, heats, and then you whittle yourself down, work yourself to be the last 8 standing to give yourself an opportunity at a podium finish.
So no room for error for consecutive races.
Yes. From the perspective is no room for error. The perspective is there is no time. And that is the fun part about the psychology piece, because in truth, and I always say this, whatever time frame you're dealing with, whether it's 30 seconds or 3 minutes, you have all the time in the world. Because we know as racers, there's plenty of 30-second laps. Luke, I'm sure you've raced many races. Yeah, the lap was 28 seconds or 30 seconds. But you could probably talk about that memorable lap for days and weeks. The car ride home, you could talk about what happened in the first turn the whole way home, and that could be a 3-hour drive home. So what's up with that, right? Yeah. That's the psychology of it. That's
interesting.
That's like how the mind manipulates time. And so, and when things are going bad, time seems to go fast, unless you're bored. And when things are going great, it almost feels like you have the time, right? That's that flow state. So even in that 30 seconds, some of the training is, okay, how can we get to a point to where we recognize we have all the time we need within that 30 seconds? And it was funny. I was just talking to an athlete yesterday about coming out of a corner and taking the time to take a breath and looking ahead and checking up and making sure you kind of see where you want to go. And I'm talking like a BMX racer.
Right.
How long did that take? It took me longer to say it than it would for you to actually do it on the track. Right. And so a lot of the work is in, I'm going to use a strong word here, manipulating our perspective and the rules we have about the game. right? And we have a lot of rules. Some of them are obvious, and some of them we're operating by that are discreet. We don't realize it. And some of the stuff we just say and we think it doesn't mean anything, but it does. Yeah. Like second place is first loser. You're only as good as your last race. All that crap, right, starts adding weight on the proverbial squat rack bar, and it's like more pressure. And my job is to help empower and encourage you, like literally have you show up with the courage to push through whatever it is you have to push through, to short circuit some of that negative stuff and short circuit that that urgency, even though it's a race. Right. But to short circuit some of that kind of urgency to like get started, because it's real easy to talk yourself out of winning, and it's real easy to think time is slipping away.
Yeah. So we talked about the crossover between, sport and business with obviously, client confidentiality. We can't talk about who your clients are, but talk to me about what does it look like when you're working with whether it's a high performance athlete or, somebody that does it for fun but takes it serious. I would fall into that category. What does it look like when you're working with an athlete versus you're also working with entrepreneurs as well? Is there a lot of similarity in what you're coaching and training them on? Because obviously business, it's not time is of the essence, but we're not talking about a race. So how does that cross over?
Yeah. So on the business side, I do speak a bit of business. And I am fortunate to understand how spreadsheets work and how sales funnels work and how pipelines work and all these kinds of, I'll just call them infrastructure things with business. So that helps. And go time looks different in business, right? Go time is like, okay, pitch meeting. Go time is okay, deadline. Go time, those, and it looks different, and everything's elongated, right? So, and sometimes with an entrepreneurial space, no one's waiting for your product until you come out with it. Your deadline's arbitrary. Like no one cares when my book's coming out.
Right.
I care when my book's coming out.
Right.
But that in and of itself is part of the conversation with the entrepreneur, right? Is getting them to kind of recognize that, okay, look, this is elective, right? And this is like kind of have to, want to, and this is kind of need to, got to.
I'm with you.
Like realm, and understanding what those differences are and where we can move the needle. And that's what's interesting with the personality assessment and these conversations is I'm here to get to know how you tick best, right? And help you evolve you, not change you, but evolve you, right? So yes, there's going to be some stuff we don't like dealing with, whether it's sports or business. But if we can create a situation or manipulate the situation to where it's, like I said, gamified or engaging us more, then we're going to be more successful in that. So from the entrepreneurial space, yes, we do have the benefit of different timelines, but the sense of urgency is the same. The sense or fear of failure is the same. The imposter syndrome is possibly the same. So all that stuff is the same. The people who want you when you're great and don't when you falter are the same. The people that hate on you after you've succeeded are the same. So that's the thing. That's where it crosses over. And ultimately, regardless of what you're doing, it's like, how can I help you live this life better, fuller, ultimately, right? And if your life includes motocross, okay, great, let's do that. If your life includes, creating phone cases, great, let's do that. Yeah. But if it's pulling away from you, and if it's detracting from your kind of sense of fulfillment or success or whatever that may be, then we talk about that and we negotiate that. An interesting point. So I had some clients and they were just pounding the pavement in the real estate business, real estate. Meanwhile, they had the side hustle of making cookies and catering, like just to kind of get them through. And I'm like, I think you guys need to get out of real estate. and trust me, like real estate in Southern California, if you're in, it's good.
Right.
But guess what? They are so much happier now. They went full bore into cookies and catering, and it's like they're a couple. People love seeing them show up.
It changed everything. Yeah.
But not only that, it's obscene what they get for their cookies, and their cookies are amazing. Like just the artistry and how the delivery and the service and all that. Like that, they are cookie people. They are food people.
Why is that? Because I feel like everybody to some aspect has that. Like whether it's they don't think they can make a living doing the thing they're passionate about, and sometimes that's the case. Yeah. But then, like, why? I don't know. Like, why don't you think more people have woken up to the fact that, like, if you're passionate about it and you're making a little bit of money, but you're only putting a little bit of time into it, like you could scale that out, as opposed to you're miserable. Maybe you're digging ditches and you hate it.
A couple things, and I say that because my son's about to be a senior in high school, and he's kind of getting those questions about what he wants to do in school, and I can hear him answering questions in a way that he who really knows what you want to do at 18 or 17? Right. But he's answering questions in a way that's like, this is what is the right thing to say way. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I'm supposed to say I want to do these things. I'm supposed to say, and he might be interested in biomed or real estate. But at the same time, like, why is he interested in that? Well, because you can make a good living and da-da-da-da-da. It's like, well, you can.
Yeah.
But is that your jam, really?
Right, exactly.
And I get it. Like, you might not have the opportunity to make a living out of making stickers in your basement. Although I think you could, but you might not. So great. Then find a job or some kind of way to make a buck that allows you to pursue your passions, right? But I think what I'm getting at is I think people kind of want to live, I shouldn't say want to, they aspire to what they think they should aspire to versus what they want to aspire to. And I got caught up in that too. I got caught up in that too with cars or, being 20 something and riding a bike for a living. Like, trust me, like there was a lot of like ego and how I should roll versus, and some of the purchases I made were to impress other people versus like what I never 100%. Even sat back to think what I really wanted, sometimes. And so, and even if you have the most supportive, caring family and friends around you, you still get this messaging that's like, you should do this, you have to do this, you need to do that. And those good, we have guardrails and people that care for us, but at the same time, it can be hard, especially when you get into personality types. Like maybe people aren't that confrontational, maybe people aren't that extroverted. And so it's hard to push back against that if your heart is in another place. And that's where the client comes to me and they're like, hey, I'm really successful and life stinks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where we want to try to create alignment. What I love about working with the athletes, they tend to be younger, but we get to continue that alignment or create more alignment at a younger age, and then they can move forward in that direction. Something
that you go by in your business, and funny enough, you have it behind you, is the saying more, better, happier. Can you talk to us about? Yeah, there it is. For those watching, it's on his wall behind him. What do you mean by that? And it seems like that is almost the cornerstone of kind of your philosophy or what you go by when you're working with your clients. Your ethos.
It's the Jason Richardson. Yeah. So what I've noticed in the helping profession, and this came out of working with a bunch of a group of physicians and chiropractors who were entrepreneurs looking to take their business outside of their four walls, was people who come to, the massage person, the lawyer, anyone in the helping profession, right?
Right.
Service. Usually people are like, I want one thing. I just want, and then they'll name off something in the success realm, right? I just want the job, the raise, get this VC, whatever it is. That's the more piece, right? And then, so that's one category of the one thing. And then, or they want this. They want, I want to fit in my dress. I want to lose the weight. I need to shave X amount of time off my sprint. I need to be at 2.5 strength to weight ratio versus 2.3, whatever that might be, right? That's the better piece. And then there's the person who's like, on paper, everything looks great. I have a business. I have a family. I got this, that. I live in the right neighborhood. I don't know. Something's missing. And that's the third piece. That's the happier piece. So people always, I shouldn't say always, generally people come to me wanting one thing. Generally people go to the helping person, the masseuse, the acupuncturist, the chiropractor. Right. They want one thing. But it's like, okay, why do you want the car? Why do you want the money? Why is it important you fit into the bathing suit? Why is it important that, I don't know, you not only have a decent house and car, but like you actually have friends that like you, right?
Right.
And that's where I just was like, again, on a plane, just kind of mapping this out. And I just created this Venn diagram. It's like, oh my gosh. So if you ever seen the movie City Slickers, it's an old movie and I'm aging myself, but there's this guy Curly. He's the old cowboy. And he's like, one thing, life's about one thing. And he's right. I don't know what that one thing is, but that one thing exists in that Venn diagram of more, better, and happier, right? You want those things because it provides something else that gives you deeper meaning. You want that one thing or you want those things thinking it'll somehow complete something, not complete you, get all corny about it, but there's a deeper meaning as to why. You want, to be healthy because you do want to play with your kids at an old age, right? You want good relationships because apparently humans are social beings, right? Like you want money, you want more money because it's cool, but it pays for those experiences with your family, right? It allows you to go to the gym, get the good gym membership with a trainer. So all these things are related. And I think as a society, we've worked really hard to compartmentalize. And there's a good reason for that. However, you cannot escape the fact that you're human, and you cannot escape the fact that what you do for a living does affect how you live.
Right.
And how you live does affect how you feel. Like we can't escape that, but we're all trying to operate as if, we're jumping from one silo to another. And it's like, hey, why don't we just back out of this thing, rearrange the playing field and say, hey, like, why don't we play the whole thing?
Yeah.
We can go for all of these things at once, provided you know how they inform each other, and provided you are working towards your design. And I mean design, not just like job and career, but like design. You get to make the rules on this thing. Now, I'm not saying quit your job tomorrow if it sucks, but I am saying if it sucks, okay, let's develop some kind of way to at least make the suckiness better, or to get you out of that suckiness in the process. Yeah. And by the way, like what else is going on outside of that that's contributing to the suckiness or that's really great, right?
Yeah.
And so we can maximize your life.
Yeah.
That's the more, better, happier.
And that applies for athletes. There's a version of that for athletes and entrepreneurs.
Totally.
Right? Yeah.
Totally. Because, I see it. None of the Olympians I've worked with, but I see it. I have seen it on the Olympic stage where, they're the person, they're supposed to get the medal, they're kind of the chosen storyline, and then they fall short of that medal for whatever reason. And then the next thing you see is like, they're like doing bobsled or like learning how to shoot a gun and like in those ski shooting sport, whatever it is, like, cause there's transfer there, there's crossover, but it's like, and I wonder if they're holding on to this one thing versus operating from more holistically.
It's funny because when you're talking about that, I immediately think of three athletes and how in Moto and how the whole more, better, happier, how it applies to them. So the first one is Ryan Villapota. I could not stand him when he was in the sport. He was miserable. He just looked unhappy. And as a fan, you're watching this and you're like, this is a sport you love. And this guy who's at the top of the sport just looks like he's miserable because he felt like, and he talks about it openly now. He's totally different now. I've met him. He's technically a client of ours now. Like he's a different person since he's gotten out of that limelight. On the other side, you have one of his competitors, Ryan Dungey. He retires 5-6 years ago, and you could just always kind of see like he wasn't fulfilled. He wasn't happy. And what happens 5 years later, he's back, he's racing, he's actually doing very well. But it's like it's like he's completed. So is there something there that's like what those two stories that I just told you, like a guy that he retired 6 years ago, but he comes back. Like, is there something there that falls into the more, better, happier, like that?
Yeah, I think so. And look, sometimes you do have unfinished business, right?
Sure.
Like, don't get me wrong. And there are aspects of your career, or of your life, or of your whatever is going on it's just going to suck, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're humans. Like, it's not all roller coasters and rainbows all the time. But it's interesting you brought up Moto, because I knew a lot of guys in BMX like that. I was one of those guys at certain periods of my life where I was just like, oh, this is, there is a grind, and you it takes that pulling back or extracting yourself from that situation sometimes to kind of regain the perspective and regain not the passion or anything corny of that, but just like why you're doing it and what you get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you can learn to race for that, right. And I'm talking, and my head's not in the clouds on this. I know there's sponsors. I know there's obligations. I know there's expectations of others who support you, but that's where, it's about you standing up on your own 2 feet and being okay with like what comes with living your own life.
Yep.
And I don't care whether that's in Moto or on the business, in the boardroom or whatever, but that's part of the deal. But I think like I said, it goes back to the rules we create. It goes back to what we've set up as our standards of success. And by the way, there's a certain responsibility to those standards. So my thing is like, well, let's make sure they're your standards, not what you think your standards should be standards, not what everyone else's standards should be. You think they should be for you, your standards, because you're going to deal with stuff you don't like anyway. Like
100%.
Anyway.
Yeah. Right.
So if you're going to deal with that stuff you don't like anyway, and you're doing it for standards that are not even your own necessarily, and you didn't take the time to think about that, and that's not, you're blaming you for not taking the time, because sometimes we just assume we know things.
Yeah.
But that's going to only compound that misery when it gets bad.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be looking for the win, for the validation.
Sure.
But if you can show up to the line already validated, already kind of like good with who you are, oh man.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I'll put it this way. So Ryan Hughes, one of my favorites, right? Rhino. When I listen to him speak on Instagram, like, and as dope as he was when he was in his prime, if you put that brain in his young body, hands down.
Yeah.
Like, because he is so solid in himself.
Yeah. Right?
Like, just so like strong. And whether you agree with him or not,
it's who he's found himself.
Good with him.
Right.
Exactly.
Where I think
is good
the point,
with him.
What you've made earlier, like the Rhino that we saw in his prime, like he was good, but he hadn't found himself yet. As weird as a lot of us think he might be as himself, he has found himself now. Like, yeah,
that's
I'm
right.
with you, man.
That's right. Yeah. So the beauty is, though, we can work on that now. You can start like right now, like really asking yourself those tough questions. And by the way, you might, some of them might be scary questions to answer, but if you have the courage to answer them, it's like, man, some of the decisions you make and some of the things you do and how you show up over the course of time.
Yeah. 100%, man.
Improvement.
Yeah. I love it. Man, this has been awesome. I love these types of conversation. It's something a little different than we normally do, but man, it's good stuff, and these always go over well with the listeners, and it's just interesting content and conversations, in my opinion. And you're awesome at what you do. I love seeing it. I do follow pretty closely, when you're putting stuff out there. It's been really cool to watch your evolution from the BMX racer to who you are now with, being Dr. Jason Richardson and helping the people that you help. I know you have, you always have exciting stuff going on. drjasonrichardson.com is the website, but what do you have coming up? Anything that, we can learn about or know about that you might be doing?
Yeah. So right now I'm actually speaking quite a bit. The cool thing is I'm heading to Loretta's.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I normally would be there. I'm not going to make it this time, but
yeah, I've been volunteering my time with Road to Recovery.
Okay.
And they have a great campaign about reducing, reducing the stigma with mental health. So I'm giving a talk there on Saturday. And
this Saturday
at Loretta's. But the cool thing is I'm talking about performance and mindset, and it's entitled Game On. So I get to, I'll give some silver, gold, and platinum nuggets.
There you go.
From my experiences and what works with my athletes. Yeah. So I'm excited about that. And then the book, More, Better, Happier, which is centrally my ethos. And the subtitle is a psychologist's letter to his kids disguised as leadership. So there's kind of there's a lot of messaging in there, not from a preachy standpoint, but just kind of like, I am a dude who happens to be a psychologist, who happened to be an athlete, putting all this together and like saying, hey kids, this might work out for you. Yeah. And the might's being, light. It will work out for you. So I'm the first people who got the copy of that book were my kids. I'm pretty sure they haven't read the whole thing, but that's life.
Well, listen, if anybody's interested in learning more about what Dr. Jason does and potentially working with him, again, go to drjasonrichardson.com, hit him up on Instagram. Like I said, I was supposed to be at Loretta's. We've gone down the last few years because they have FIM e-bike North American Championships. Mm-hmm. We race on Saturday. I'm not going to be able to make it down. I've got some personal stuff going on, but my team will be there. So I forget what time they're racing. It might be 3:00, but if you're free and you want to wander on over to the e-bike course, you'll see some of our guys down there, and it's fun to watch. It's cool because a lot of the Moto guys come out for that race. Brayton's gonna do the e-bike race. Last year, Gareth Swanepoel, who's the trainer for Star, did it. Brian Lopes actually came out and did it. He DNF'd, so I technically have beat Brian Lopes in a race.
You've beaten Brian Lopes?
Yeah,
cool.
It's insane. Yeah, I'm pretty.
It's rare that it happens, but definitely brag about it when it does.
Yeah, exactly. Man, this has been awesome. We will obviously keep in touch. I'd love to have you come back on, and if we ever get a chance to link up in the future, maybe we'll do one of these in person. But awesome content, man. I really appreciate you making time today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, guys.
And if you're at Loretta's, come say hi.
Yeah, I was going to say, make sure you track him down. Do you have any idea? Will you just kind of be roaming around?
I'll be kind of roaming around. It's my first one. So
it's hotter than hell down there. Be ready.
Yeah, so I'll be kind of kid and candy store. I actually, oddly enough, I missed the East Coast Southern heat humidity thing. Like that's something I do miss from racing. I won't miss it too much once I get there, I'm sure. But yeah, find me. Conversation. I'm willing to talk about most anything, racing, life, and success.
It's funny that you said the heat and humidity. I got a text message from a gentleman that was on our team last year. He had some stuff come up this year, and he wasn't able to race. And the group text is talking about everybody going down to Loretta's. And I'm going to read you verbatim his quote. He said, "I'm really going to miss the 9-hour drive to Satan's ass crack where the air never moves." So
pretty much.
That is it's beautiful down there, but man, it's hot. So
nothing like you need to take a shower after take a shower out there.
Yeah, that's right. Awesome, guys. Well, thanks for listening to the podcast today, guys. Be sure to hit up Dr. Jason and drjasonrichardson.com, and we'll be back next week with another great episode for you.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Moto Marketing Podcast. If your goal is to get real, measurable results from your marketing that will grow your company revenue, then check out how Impakt Media can get the same results that they have for Moto's most iconic brands by visiting thinkimpakt.com. That's THINKIMPAKT.com. Have a marketing question that you want answered on the show? Send your questions to questions@motomarketingpodcast.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast.